Okay, as you know, there's a lot going on in amateur radio, and we're a much different hobby to we were a few years ago. 10 years ago, or 20 years ago when I came into the hobby, we didn't have all these digital voice things. We didn't have lots of the other things like FT8 and things like that. So going forward, what I tried to do was bring back to amateur radio, and as we go. Right, first slide. We do the podcast normally, but we decided to have a go at doing something else. So early in 2021, we had a bit of a discussion. What can we do to help build the hobby? How can we generate more listeners? And there's a lot of digital radios around. There are 6 different digital radio modes for a walkie-talkie. And you're thinking, well, they don't talk to each other, you know, so what's the point? Which one do you buy? If you buy one, well, you buy all of them, yeah. But if you buy one in your area,
I'm surprised all the manufacturers aren't lined up there.
no, they want to shoot me because they all want that. Everyone wants to be king of their own anthill. That's the problem. So there are lots of different modes, and equally I'll come on to that. Secondly, we keep talking about bringing youngsters into our hobby. Now, if we bring youngsters into our hobby, what's the sort of things they do these days? They're in a digital world. They're not in an analog world anymore. So they kind of understand digital. They want it to be digital. So the idea was to try and make it interesting to youngsters that we're trying to drag into the hobby, and also give us some a new technology to play with. So, issues. Well, as I said, digital radios for VHF and UHF have 3 major problems. Next, Colin. There are too many different protocols. And they're always promoted by a manufacturer. So, manufacturer A says, mine's the best, and I ain't going to work with him. Manufacturer B goes, I ain't going to work with them. So, we've got to get around it. And as I said here, there are too many locations on the internet once you've got connected to how do I connect to talk to other people. Now, you all know there are massive numbers of talk groups for DMR, there's various places for D-Star, there's various places for Fusion. We go there. But we do need a way of bringing it all back in one place. And it's frustrating. How do you find somebody to talk to? If you've got the wrong radio or you're connected to the wrong thing, how do you find somebody? And the object was to try and make things easier for new people coming into the hobby to just have a chat. Okay. So, this is a work in progress. 2 years on, it's still a work in progress. It will be a work in progress forever, because as new things come along, we will work on it. But, as it's up here, we'll judge things on a cost effectiveness. You know, there's lots of things I could be doing, but my pockets ain't that deep. I ain't won the lottery yet. So, as new things come along, we will add them. And you'll see later on, some of you will say to me, what's M17? Well, it's a digital mode that a group of people are trying to get off the ground. They believe it is the best thing since sliced bread. It will take over the world. They may be right. However, nobody makes radios for M17 at the moment, so they're on a hiding to nothing, in my opinion, although we try and support them. So, we had to choose a base technology. Could have chosen anything, because there are 6 major modes for VHF and UHF. So, which one do we go with? Well, there's DMR, which has been around a long, long time, Motorola. Yaesu Fusion, C4FM. Not YSX, because YSX is actually Yaesu's big network of servers that pulls together. It's not. D-Star, NXDN, which some of you won't have heard of. NXDN is Yaesu and Kenwood's idea of DMR. Kenwood call it NetEdge, ICOM call it IDAS radios. 6.25, yeah. And then I come back to M17, which is this new one that everybody says it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, but I'm not so sure it is. Followed on by P25, which is the system that the Americans use for their public services radios. Now, P25 is expensive, but it's doable.
Have you mentioned Tetra?
I haven't mentioned Tetra.
Your Tetra repeaters on you?
Yeah, well, Tetra, I've got to be a bit careful of because how many more modes can I do at cost benefit analysis? So coming on to it, so we needed to choose which one of those platforms we were going to choose to be our base platform. So we ended up choosing DMR. Now, some very good reasons why I ended up choosing DMR, because I felt it was the biggest number of users out there would be on DMR. Reason for that is there are far more radios out there for DMR. The disadvantage is, and this slide's a little bit out of date, but there are also different versions of DMR out there. So which one do you go to? Now, I know Dennis is in the front and he would have loved me to probably choose the one you use. I believe Phoenix is now Scottish DMR, so yeah, that's already changed. But there are various variants of DMR. The one we went with was Brandmeister. Now, rightly or wrongly, the reason I went with Brandmeister was that they had a large, reliable network. Yeah? They had a large existing user base. Now, when I talk to Phil in Australia, large parts of Australia aren't Brandmeister. They've gone with what used to be Phoenix, now Scottish DMR. So different parts of the world can cause you problems. There was some good support tools with DMR, Brandmeister. Not only the fact that the head of Brandmeister UK is a podcast listener, and he's also very helpful when we set it up. So Brandmeister offered us assistance in setting this up. The reason I went with Brandmeister is, and hopefully I've got this right, Dennis, when we're on Brandmeister, you can actually ask for what talk group you want. So if there was a Brandmeister repeater down the road and you wanted to connect to us on our group, you could set that repeater onto our talk group. With our variants of DMR, it's limited to the talk groups that the repeater keeper allows you to have. No other reason than that. I wanted as many people as possible to be able to access this, but I didn't want to limit it. So, and sorry? Yeah, yeah. But I wanted people to be able to get on and be able to get onto talk groups easy. I mean, the chances of me saying, put my talk group on all your repeaters, Mr. X DMR system, they go, no, who are you? No. So I wanted to make it available to everybody. So that's why we went that route. So getting started, well, we started off with a Brandmeister talk group, which was allocated to us on a temporary basis, yeah, which is fine. And at that point in time, we tested for 3 weeks with some ICQ presenters and a few test users. I hasten to add, that worked out a real success. We were quietly just getting on. At the end of that, I went back and said, okay, we're now on board. Can we have an official one? Brandmeister, and I would guess a lot of people are going to ask for similar things, whether you'll get it or not. This is a bit like rocking horse manure. Brandmeister allocated us an international talk group of 9480. Normally, anything starting with a 9 is an international group. And because they said the podcast was international, you can have an international number. Normally 4 digits a country, 3 and 4 digits of countries. So you're unlikely to get that. And even now, talking to people in Brandmeister, they go, how did you get that? It was just luck at the time. but we were allocated. So we started off early on, this is back in February 2021. We thought we wanted to put all these people on the bottom, and we wanted to set our server up to do all these bits and pieces. And we started off with Brandmeister only, so you could get into us, chat with Brandmeister, and if you had DroidStar, the mobile phone app, you could communicate in and out. And that worked okay. Yeah, it was all right, and we were quite happy. But really, we were just utilising the Brandmeister network. Moving forward from that, so that was phase 1 completed. You know, lots of contacts around the world took place, and everybody seemed happy using the talk group. So phase 1 was complete. Phase 2, well, we always said we were going to do other things, so we put a bridge in place that linked our talk group with Brandmeister through with Fusion and I say NXDN at this point in time. So technically, I was in belief that I had three talk groups connected. As I say, NXDN is a version of DMR. ICOM call it IDAS, Kenwood call it NetEdge. And we went off and we said, there you go, that's what we've got. We've bridged them all together. Any of these modes all talk together, thank you very much. Although most people hadn't got that. So that's the graphic effectively. Now, we had already set up the D-Star bit, but we hadn't got a way of allowing people to talk to the others through it, because this requires a dongle. That dongle gets manufactured by a guy in Holland or in the Netherlands, and then has to be plugged into the front of a PC somewhere, a device somewhere. So we hadn't got the dongle at the time. So it was a work in progress, and that's how I believed it was on the 15th of March. So you can see, very quickly we moved to 3 and going forward. Colin? Okay, and just a non-bits and pieces, but those were live. P25, we had no hope at the time. D-Star, we were waiting the transcoder, and 2 others to be announced as they come along. Moving on. Okay, very quickly, YSF is not WiresX. Yaesu System Fusion is the protocol. WiresX is their big wide area network where all their repeaters connect to. That's how I describe it as happening. And as you can see from here, C4FM or YSF is their mode. So with a C4FM radio, it will switch between FM or C4FM, depending on how you set it up at the time. You can jump backwards and forwards. Okay. Okay, so WiresX, great idea, but it doesn't allow you to connect to multiple modes. The other thing is, can I add WiresX to our group? Technically, I could, but I'd have to set up a WiresX node, which means I've got to have a computer on all the time. I've got to buy a ICOM box, a sound card box, and an ICOM radio, just to have the odd person who might come across from WiresX. So we decided WiresX wasn't ideal for us. But anyway, that was us completed. Phase 2 completed, we got NXDN, and as I believed NXDN, you'll tell you more about that in a minute, and Yaesu Fusion bridged in. NXDN never worked. I will tell you why later. Okay. Then, we were always going to add D-Star, but I hadn't got round to buying the dongle and bits and pieces. One of our listeners rings me up and he says, here, I'll transcode your D-Star for you from my house. So I'll be your D-Star transcoder. I've got a spare one kicking around. So they started offering, he offered us a D-Star transcoding, which allowed us then to do the D-Star work. I was running the control server, but the D-Star stuff has to go off to another server to be have the transcoding done and back to us. So we then added a fourth mode to our bridge, yeah? And we went to the internet and pub said, hey, we're running these three, it's all talking to Brandmeister and it all works, and thank you very much, and we're really happy. Moving on, so that's the bit more of the drawing we had. As you see, I bypassed P25, and that was around about the 10th June 2021. So a lot of work happened very quickly, bang, 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 get this up. So we got all that in place, put this together, and it said, yeah, we know P25. We actually have now got D-Star, and there were a couple of others we were thinking about. And very early on, we suddenly get a number of countries suddenly wanting to work through. So you can see, probably in the first year, they were the countries that are connected. Now, some nice ones, Trinidad and Tobago, Republic of Korea, I believe that's Southern Korea, by the way. But some interesting ones, Oman and that, and some of the ones you'd expect. And yeah, within the first few months, the new IDs, we'd had 238 IDs connected, 27,000 connections, and 33 countries. Now, unfortunately, I can't do this anymore because I'm willing to tell everybody how many connections and everything. Brandmeister reset their stats server every so often, and which is fine, but I can still work out the number of countries. At the moment, we're about 45 countries. So phase 3 was completed, and I think we were moving in the right direction. Then it all went wrong. No. Okay. So at that point in time, Colin and I decided that we really wanted to put it on our server. Our developer at the time ran our reflector, but we decided if it was a Brandmeister, if it's an ICQ product, it should be on an ICQ server. So we then started managing it, moving the server into a data center. We're with DigitalOcean, and it's not the cheapest of ISPs to do this, but it's reliable. We purchased our own ICQ hardware, D-Star transcoder, so we could transcode our own D-Star as well. And we produced a user notification system on our website. So if something's down on our website, if you go to the digital part on our website, we actually tell you, sorry, this is down at the moment, when we know about it. And yeah, work's being carried out. So we're now in that phase was where we were at the end of 2021. So at the end of 21, phase 4 is complete, and I'm going, yes, we're moving forward. Then we decided to do some other bits and pieces. We decided to set up what we call the ICQ Hub, which was to allow people to have chats. But if you want to get hold of somebody in Australia, they're 8 to 12 hours ahead of us. So you've got to be able to set times when you're going to have these chats sometimes. You know, just because we put a call through at 4 in the afternoon, don't mean to say Australia's going to be around or whatever, vice versa. So we started doing events and said, well, let's do, find out who'd like to just have a chat with us. And we put on a 2-hour chat window, which in hindsight wasn't enough. Okay, and yeah, we also, on this system now supports the phone, as I said earlier. But the other thing is, if you haven't got a digital radio, you could actually listen to it on the Brandmeister hose line. So you can always listen in. We run our first event on the 16th of October 2021. 2 hours wasn't enough. Wasn't enough time to get enough people in. But it worked well, and we went from there. Our second event, which I might not be on the slides, we then did at Christmas 2021, and we did it just on midnight to try and get people over. So I'm at midnight online and seeing the other people in. 2 hours wasn't enough time. So, okay, Colin, we move on. So, the digital meets, as I say, did work for us. Since then, we're doing 12-hour meetings. Now, the last one finished last week. It started at 7 UTC, ended at 1900 UTC. I have to say, by the time I got to 1900 UTC answering all the questions, and it wasn't just me discussing with people, some of the users were discussing amongst themselves, which is what it's there for, not just talk to me. My friend Phil, VK6ADF and I, bearing in mind at 7 o'clock at night for me is 3 in the morning for him, I don't think either of us made much sense on the last quarter of an hour. But we had a great time, and there were a number of users. So the 12-hour meets have been set up now and are working through. So, how to access our network? Well, there are a number of ways of accessing our network. You can access it via a repeater, be it a Brandmeister repeater, a D-Star repeater, or a Fusion repeater. Or you can do it on a hotspot or a dongle, yeah? Or via DroidStar, which is a mobile phone app. And I'm sure other computer phone apps will come along. Repeaters are fairly straightforward, as I say. They're the easy ones. Brandmeister Talk 9480, Fusion and so on, down. This is all on our website, the final drawing. Okay, with a hotspot and a dongle, it's fairly straightforward to just pick up what you need. Now, hotspots, there are various hotspots on the market. The one that I use mainly are PiStar, and Mr. Andy Taylor, who wrote PiStar, gave that software away to the community. There are open spot hotspots. They're a bit more expensive. They work very well as well. But you know, you need to have, if you haven't got a repeater in your area, you need a hotspot to get you forward. And a PiStar software running on a little Raspberry Pi with a little transceiver board on top and an MMDVM board on top will take you forward. Okay, so that's what a simple hotspot looks in the far side. This side is what's on the board. And it looks fairly complicated. This chip here is the processor, a bit like an Arduino, and that's the transceiver on that little chip. 10 milliwatts, and yes, it does work well because it kept Mrs. B out of her car the other week when we were having a conversation. Those boards used to be about 20 quid. You've got one, yeah. Those boards used to be about 20 quid. They're a little bit more expensive now. And yeah, as I say, holding it in my hand, I've just been passed, that's the size of it. Probably the camera isn't picking it up, but yeah, you can see the two chips on it. Great little board. Use a Pi Zero, yeah. The Pi Zero is usually what the choice for the bottom of those boxes. There's a new Pi Zero, the faster one, and that works very, very well. But be honest, apart from it's faster loading and it works, you wouldn't notice the difference. One of my hotspots out there has got the new Pi Zero in it, one's got the old, and unless I told you, you wouldn't spot it, but they are good. Yeah, so that's what's in the hotspots. Okay, PiStar, great piece of software. It runs on a Pi Zero, a Pi 3, and a Pi 4. Yeah, Pi 4 is probably a bit of an overkill, but it does work. Now, PiStar gets updated regularly. If you're using PiStar, if you either leave your hotspot on all the time and they update at about 4 in the morning. They download all the updates and bits and pieces. Or when you bring up one you haven't used for a little while, go in and do the updates before you start using it. Because the reason for this is, you know, there are new talk groups happen, there are new bits and pieces, and it keeps your device up to date. Now, unlike us, at one point in time, we moved our server from one IP address to another. And if you hadn't updated your Pi-style hotspot, you'd still be pointing at the old server and not being able to talk to us. So when things change, these updates are really, really useful. And in fairness, Andy does it for the whole of the world. So it is worth doing. The hotspots support DMR, NXDN, P25, YSF and D-Star. So even if you haven't got an NXDN, you can make one of the other modes emulate NXDN through the hotspot if you want to talk to NXDN boxes and P25. They're fairly easy to install, easy to set up. There's just a text file you add, which is on the Pi-style website. You build the image, you copy the text file onto your computer, which you've produced on the little file on the website. And all that does is say, my SSID for my network is this, and my password is this. Then when you copy that file into your Pi-star, when it reboots, it goes, my Raspberry Pi can now connect to my Wi-Fi and it can now work. So that's good. The other thing is, it's free. Us amateurs like free. Now, I spoke to the guy who wrote this a number of times, Andy, and he's adamant he's given this to the market. I would suggest over 90% of all hotspots run Pi-star, and he's giving it away for free and supports it. That's the basic dashboard that it looks like. Not very clear, I know, but it shows who's connected, frequencies and bits and pieces, shows them working. And for those who passed our stand, I've got one running out there on a little 6-inch screen. So updates, yes, do them. They do happen overnight if you leave your hotspot plugged in, otherwise thing. And seriously, a number of the strange, weird faults you may have with your hotspot that worked 3 months ago and doesn't anymore will be fixed by doing an update, trust me, on that one. So, if you don't have a radio, well, what are we going to do? And the people go, well, it's not real radio, is it? Well, yes, it is. Yes, we still welcome you. If you've got a mobile phone, you can't get onto the Brandmeister network unless you've got a Brandmeister ID. So, in fact, you might be using your mobile phone. You're still an amateur. You know, you have to be an amateur to be able to connect and obviously get through. And so once again, I'm publicising our network, but it can be done. Right, DroidStar, little phone app, as I said to you, it will do some of these modes. There is a bit of a problem licensing with his transcoder, and he did have to take the transcoder out of his software, but if you look on the internet, you can find where to put it back in again, so he doesn't get prosecuted for breaking copyright. Okay, we have a software. Okay, adding analog radios to our system ain't going to happen, not in a million years. Reason I don't want it to happen is because we can monitor as we know the quality of what's going in. If I link Echo Link, I could link Echo Link. How many of you listen to repeaters and all you hear is connected, disconnected, connected, disconnected? I don't want that. I want it freely available to people. And the other thing is I can't control the quality of the audio. Whereas if we stay with set digital modes, we know the audio quality. The other thing is, if we get an abuser, we can kill the abuser fairly quickly by banning them from the system. Yeah? Whereas you can't with analog. And anybody who's a repeater keeper knows that analog abuse is a pain in the arse. Sorry, you might have to edit that, Colin. Right. So, where did we get to? Okay, if you need help, place to look is our website. There is a short thing to it, but carry on with our website. There's a short URL, which is in red, not very easy to see, but off our main website, just go along to Digital Group, and there's a lot of things in there on that. Carrying on, connecting to it, well, however you connect, all we ask is you enjoy yourself and behave yourself. Quite honestly, I don't mind if you're not an ICQ listener, doesn't matter, it's there for the hobby. And we're putting something back in the hobby. So that got us to December 2021. Oh, trust me, it won't be long. On 2021, we agreed to have a change control freeze because everybody's busy. Families, Christmas, blah, blah. Our developer at the time couldn't stop fiddling. That's all I'm going to say. So I locked him out. Now, it wasn't these two. So I locked him out of the system. And it went something like this. Martin, I can't log into the system. Yeah, I know you can't. Why not? Well, you know we have a change control. Yeah. Well, you were fiddling the other day, so I've locked you out. And words were, go and take a long walk off a short pier for the clean version of it. But he basically told me, tough. And he walked from the project. Now, I am not a developer. I'm not a programmer. And suddenly, I got this system that's half done with problems. I now work out MXCN's never worked, even though he swore blind it did. And we've got a system that don't go too well. So early part of 2022, we got an unstable system, and I'm making improvements. Fortunately, I was out of work at that time, so I could spend more time on this. March 2022, one of our listeners, damn good programmer, rang me up and he said, Martin, this is too good to fall apart. So I'm going to help you. I can do what you need doing in about 2 hours. But I ain't doing it for you. He said, you have to learn it. So I'm going to teach you. Well, I've got to say, he probably lost out on that one because I'm not very good at a programming level. But I learned a hell of a lot. And we went through. So after a lot of hard work on both parts, and for various reasons, we built System 2. And System 2 is actually clean, it works properly, it doesn't fall over, and all those bits and pieces. So we decided we were going to have a parallel run. So we had our original system and our new system. And they were parallel running, and we were moving modules over for a period of time. And in fairness, nobody spotted it. We said we were doing it, but nobody phoned up and complained. Nobody gave us any grief, and it all worked. The secret why it all worked, before Colin pushes the next slide, the secret why it all works is that, remember I said we're Brandmeister? Now, I've heard so many stories about people saying, Brandmeister, they're horrible, they give me grief, they don't do it, but they're real hard work to work with the worst. Yes, they are, if you upset them. The problem is, if you're honest and you go and you say, this is what I want to do, and I want to do this, this, and this, and I plan to do that, they'll look at it and go, yeah, you can do that. Think about that. You might want to change that, but in essence, great. If you say to them, I want to do this, and they look at you want to do that, and you do that, and then you add all these things you haven't told them about, and it crashes their network, they get upset. Then other people come back and they go, yeah, but they're horrible people because they got upset with me. No, you crashed their network. So, yes, we got this going. So minimum disruption. I don't think any users understood, and yes, they all work. So 5 modes at that point in time going forward. Shortly after, we added M17. Now, as I said, M17 is a mode from the States. At the moment, we can allow M17 users to communicate with us. We can't initiate an M17 call yet. And I'll leave it at yet, but if you have an M17 radio. So that's what we have. Over here's a mobile phone. There's 6 different modes. The various ways of communicating. This is on our website, so you don't have to take photos if you don't want to. You can download this off our website, it's no great secret. The XLX948 is running up in the Docklands on a managed server, and the Ambi-Transcoder is at my house. I did have a minor problem a couple of weeks ago because I changed my ISP, and my ISP gave me carrier grade natting, which is another story, and we had to fight them to get the Ambi server back online. But that effectively is a Raspberry Pi with a dongle in at my house. And so that's where we are, Colin. Countries, as of the end of last year, some more nice countries that we've worked. And yeah, any questions? You're quiet.
How do you prevent phone users from being amateur radio or not being amateur radio?
I don't, but it's done within the software. So when they try and sign up, you have to get an ident. Yeah, yeah. The phone users get the ident, so they yeah, and they can connect to.
Because that was one of the requirements that Ofcom required.
Yeah, and they can.
The DMR was set up that you had to apply for an ident.
Yeah, yeah, and say you can use Scottish DMR with the DroidStar as well, so they have to get an ID to use it. So yeah.
That was a brilliant talk. Thank you very much. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the Chinese are now doing, I bought one recently, they're doing the MMDVM built-in antennas now, so you don't even have to have an antenna.
No, we're on the board on them DVMs. There is actually a thing for putting a link across or a module on, which is the internal. Yeah. Yeah, which is probably what's something similar device in the open spot, because the open spot doesn't have an external.
Because I've set one up with Blue DV, so I'm using that with Blue DV.
Yeah.
D-Start, that's how I was getting D-Start.
Right.
That way, that one for D-Start, so another one
Well, the only problem I have at my house, is that I run 6 hotspots when I'm testing. So, yeah, so I've got 5 of the modes. I haven't got M17 running at my house, but I've got 5 of the modes, and then on DMR I've got a simplex and a duplex hotspot running for experimental modes. But there you go. I don't know if I've overrun. I did, guys. If any of you are staying for the RSGB talk, I did tell them I'm the warm-up man. So, but. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no problems.